How long have you lived in Japan?
I first came to Japan in late 1964 for the USS Mars in Yokosuka. Stayed about 7 years that time, went back to the States, Tennessee and Virginia, and then came back with the Navy in late 78. Stayed through about 83, went back to Jacksonville, Florida for the longest year of my life, and came back to Japan in 85, and I've been here ever since. So right now I'm right at about, 32 years or so in Japan.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
When did you start learning the language?
Well, initially I was married to a Japanese.
Okay.
And I learned quite a bit of Japanese in the first years here in Japan. But again, all I am is I'm conversationally capable. I'm not even conversationally fluent. And I'm definitely not fluent. Fluency implies the ability to read, write, and speak. But
do you write at all?
No, I don't read and write. One thing I'll tell the Japanese is basically I'm about the same as a Japanese third grader before they start studying their kanji. I can speak up a storm, but I can't read and write. You see, so yeah, that's no.
Well, one of the things that amazed me about you is when the orphanage here, they were passing out the presents, and you were the Santa Claus, and you were speaking Japanese to the Japanese orphans here, and I thought that was awesome. I found that to be amazing, you know.
Well, I enjoy doing that, and the big thing, I enjoy that very much, and that's a level of Japanese that I'm extremely comfortable with. And some people have called me glib. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's how they're using the term, but I'm usually pretty good at just off the cuff conversation and being able to impromptu deal with kids and like that. And I really do enjoy those opportunities because the Japanese kids fascinate the heck out of me, and the ones, many times, we tend to believe that a lot of these children are from orphanages, but actually a lot of the children that come up on base are from children's homes, which are basically the equivalent of our state-run homes. Here they're prefectural, Nagasaki Prefecture. And coming from a children's home, they'll have either a mother or a father or both parents, but it's a dysfunctional family. The child's having problems, there's abuse, parents incarcerated. Anything like along that line there where the government of Nagasaki Prefecture deems that the home situation is not adequate, and they take the child, and then they'll put them into these children's homes. Part of our problem as Americans is whenever you go to any one of these events, immediately the Americans, oh, I love them, I want to adopt this one, I want to adopt that one, and like that. And children's homes are very, very nervous about that perception. None of these children are up for adoption. All of them are wards of the state, and so we've had some uncomfortable experiences with the Japanese authorities, children's home authorities, when some Americans have become too, they want to take children home, individual children home for the night. They want to do this, they want to do that. And they feel extremely responsible for them there. There's no way that's going to happen. And sometimes some Americans can get pretty raucous about it there. You know that, but no, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. The chapel does great work with the children. Sasebo Wardroom Association does wonderful work with the children's homes and that. Safe Web.
So maybe we call it orphanages because we don't know.
Well,
because we actually think it's an orphanage.
Usually when you see a home with a bunch of children and some caretakers, we are of the mind there that it's an orphanage.
Okay.
And sometimes we'll just use the term, you know, oh, well, it's an orphanage. And I don't think I have parents or no parents. They're orphans because they're not being cared for by their parents. But there's actually a big difference between an orphan. An orphan is a child with no parents. Okay. A child with no parents. And in this case right here, there are other situations that are causing these children to be taken from a home. Yeah. And actually in some cases there, they've explained the parents have actually felt they could not afford to raise a child, and they've turned them over to the state custody. So they take care of them until they're 18 years old. Then they'll put them out into a program there to teach them a skill, and pretty much after that they're on their own.
And have I heard that there are actually women who remarry that will give up their kids?
Oh yes.
Because their husbands don't want their children there.
Right. In Japan, adoption is not really I won't say that no Japanese ever adopts, but it's definitely not a prevalent thing. It's not something a Japanese, you don't take children from somebody else. Family is really important in Japan. I mean, family is, the family unit is, that's where the pride is, that's where the, the sense of self is in family. Taking a child whom you don't know from outside and adopting them, bringing them into your home, it's just not a natural act for the Japanese like it is for many Americans. Now there are Japanese orphanages out there, but the vast number of Japanese orphanages still will not allow foreigners to adopt the children because Japanese are very prideful.
That's right.
They're very ethnocentric people. And when you basically, they allow other people to adopt their children, it's like they're giving Japanese to other countries, and the child will lose its sense of Japaneseness in that. And a lot of Americans really can't understand this. Say, well, it's fairly easy to adopt a child in Korea or in Vietnam or in China. Well, I want to adopt a child here. Many years ago, it was a kind of a eye-opening experience for me. I was on the matter of fact, I was on the Midway at that time. This was in the late 70s. And I was giving one of my sailors a ride out to Yokohama. I lived in Yokohama. And as we were riding along, he made a comment there, and it struck me. And he likes coming to Japan because we were we'd visit the Philippines, we'd visit Thailand, we'd visit Korea, we'd visit many of the other countries over here. And he says it feels good to be back in Japan because the children on the street don't make you feel guilty about not giving them something. They're not coming up to you asking for stuff, candy, give me dime, and like that, as it is in many of the other countries that that we will visit, and they don't look poor. I mean, they're dressed pretty well. Even maybe if it isn't a family that's getting along all that well as far as economics goes, still the children are clean. They're they're dressed in clean clothes. They're not walking around like Pigpen out of Charlie Brown there, where you kind of feel sorry for them and you feel you ought to buy them a candy bar or something there. It's nothing like that in Japan, and as soon as you mentioned that, it struck me that is something that I've always liked about here is when I go out there, you don't feel superior. You don't feel superior to the people because they all look as well off or better off than we do, you see. And in many other, what we've come to call third world countries or whatever the catchphrase of the day happens to be for other countries that we're looking down on for their, their economy or whatever, that generally when you look, you can see the poverty. In America, we can see the poverty. Here in Japan, homeless people, they were very rare in Japan. Starting up around Tokyo and that 20 or 30 years ago, and now most every city now has some homeless population. Many of these people, they just dropped out of society. I mean, they were functioning Japanese. The Japanese society is a society of pressure. Pressure to succeed, pressure to do well, pressure to maintain face, pressure, pressure, pressure. And many of these people, all they've done is said, that's it, no more. You know, and they've just walked away from it.
Do you recall the guy that was here a few years ago? When we first saw him, we called him the Baka Man because he was standing out, you know, in the rain.
Flower
and
man. Yeah.
The flower man. Do you recall him? Did you? I know Greg had actually interviewed him for a story, and he spoke perfect English. And yeah,
I read Greg's story while I was up in still up in Atsugi at the time there, and got down here, and bigger than life, there he was sitting outside the main gate, waving at the cars. He loved American apples. If you'd stop and give him an apple, he was very, very happy. Matter of fact, I understand he passed away. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
We wondered what happened to him because we hadn't seen him in a while.
About 4 years. Matter of fact, we haven't seen him for about 4 years. I think it was about 3 years or so ago that he passed away.
Do you know where? Was he Okinawa? I know he was from Okinawa.
Okay, yeah, and I don't really know that much about him. I do know that he was just an eccentric. He was an eccentric. He loved Americans. People would comment on his hat. His hat was always and so he wore the hat because, again, he became known as the Flower Man, and you know, so just very extremely gregarious. He walked a lot. You'd see him out by the Daito Jusco. You'd see him various other high traffic places, waving at cars passing, smiling, talking to people and that. I mean, every society, every town, so on and so forth, has its eccentrics, and he was high up on the list of, he was a, and Greg did a lot to help establish him as a cultural, you know, treasure here in Sasebo. And what's frightening is when our society is such that you'll see that, and you'll think, I really want to stop and talk to him because he's a, you know, he's such a, you know, an outgoing person in that. Tomorrow, I'll, you know, I'm gonna stop and talk to him, and then all of a sudden you discover, I haven't seen him for a week. I haven't seen him for a month. I haven't seen him for a few months. And when I started asking around, I understood that he was sick, and then later on I was told that he passed. But you know, that's one of those sad things that human beings do. You know, is I'm going to say nice things to somebody someday. You know, because I really appreciate what they do or whatever, and then we never get around to it, and they leave, we leave, one of us dies, and you're thinking, I missed my opportunity. You know, you got to take advantage of those chances.
That is so true. Oh, that is so true. Do you want to speak a little Japanese for me? Anything? And of course, you'll have to translate after now because Americans are going to be seeing this mostly.
Yes.
Now, before I came over here, I didn't know anything about the language, and so I went out and bought some tapes to learn little pieces of language, and one of them was Ikage desu ka? How are you? Very formal. So we're in Tokyo, right? And I can't wait to use my Japanese that I've learned, the very little bit I learned. And so the maids were cleaning up the room, and I looked down and I said, Ikage desu ka? And they looked at me, and both looked at me as if to say, huh? What are you saying? No, nani? And so then I realized, I guess I said it wrong. It took coming to Sasebo to learn Oh, Genki desu is, you know,
Well,
the better way. So.
yeah, kaga desu is just very formal, right? That's the thing.
How are you?
Yeah, Genki desu is the more familiar version of that. There's an interesting thing about that I actually discovered probably about 30 years ago there. I hadn't paid attention, but when I am dealing with a Japanese, I look Japanese, my mind starts thinking in Japanese.
Yeah.
So I can talk in Japanese. It's kind of a funny thing. It is said around the world there, many people in Europe are what they call polyglot. Polyglot. They're fluent in 3 or more languages. Okay. Many other people around the world are bilingual. Okay. They have their own language, and then many times the second language is English. Okay. The only people around the world that are monolingual, many people will say, are the Americans. That's somebody with one language. It's, you know, when you're going along like that, actually it's a phenomena there that anybody that is fluent in any other tongue, when you go into speaking that tongue, your thought process goes into that language. It has to. You can't go through the translation. You can tell somebody that's not all that comfortable with Japanese, or they're just learning it, you know, phrases out of a book or out of a class, because many times what they'll do is they'll think of what they want to say in English, and then they'll put it into the language they're going to speak and state it. So that's time consuming. There's these pregnant pauses in the conversation. But my thing is when I see a Japanese or somebody whom I assume to be Japanese, I start thinking in Japanese. So it's kind of funny on the base many times, because you go into many of these offices and whatnot, a Japanese, and I'll say something in Japanese, and they will respond in English, because they're seeing American, and their mind goes into English. And people will stand there and look strangely at you there, because I'm talking Japanese, they're talking English, and we're carrying on a cogent conversation. So that's, and it's scary, because if I'm talking to a Japanese and their English is very good, or they don't understand Japanese, okay, there's a period there when I have to translate what I'm thinking in Japanese into English to communicate with them, until I get into the swing, and then it's fine, because then it's a mind thing. It's
well, there are a couple of times you came to our rescue. I don't know if you remember this, but one time one of them was when I was getting my eyeglasses. You came in and I was trying to explain something to the guy, and you just, what do you need? And you just went right from there in Japanese, and basically rescued me from making a mistake. So,
well, Rose gets upset with me sometimes, because I butt into things. I will see people having problems and that, or I perceive they're having problems, and I'll step in and say, can I help you? And there have been a few times there when the people say, no, who are you? What is it? Get out of here. You know, so, and that's, it's embarrassing, you know, and, but I can't stop myself from doing it. I get out there and Don Quixote or something there, you know, but, no. It's so comfortable for me living in Japan, because getting lost, well, I get lost. I mean, but I know how to ask the questions to get where I need to get to. If I'm hungry, I can find food and I can understand what it is that I'm getting. It's just so much more comfortable when you have a knowledge of the language. And the Japanese, one beauty is the Japanese is they appreciate anybody who speaks some Japanese. What I use there, the French. I mean, I'm part French, part Dutch, and I studied one semester of French in school, and got over there in the Navy, got over to Cannes, France, and I went over there, and I'm over there. Comment allez-vous? Il va bien, merci, et vous? Je ne sais pas. You know, and I think I'm doing pretty good, and they look at you mean, you know, until you speak English, because they don't like anybody butchering their language. The Japanese have a total, matter of fact, most Americans you'll find is when we use a little bit of Japanese with the Japanese, they'll come back with a string of Japanese, assuming that we know more than we do, you know, and then you go, sumimasen, sumimasen, skoshi shika wakaranai. And, but they love it. They because they know you've gone out of your way to learn that, because it's not something that we speak. But no, it's I really enjoy that, and I like the warmth of the Japanese people. Now that sounds strange because they're not a warm people. Okay, they're a reserved people. But the warmth comes out when you show appreciation and interest. When you show some interest, they repay that interest with, you know, and with huge dividend. I mean, they tell you more than you ever wanted to know. You've got to be careful when you compliment a Japanese about something. Oh, those are beautiful slippers you have on there. Oh, here. No, really, I don't want your slippers, you know, but because they just believe in being cordial and polite and basically friendly. And there's not a lot of preconceived biases and bigotry and stuff like that. And that really bothers me when, oh no, they've got things that they're biased about. I mean, other Asian nationalities and things like that, you know, they go back centuries, but I mean, they're not perfect in any way. I mean, they've got their imperfections, and the imperfections are, again, what makes them an interesting people. But no, there's many things I like about living over here.
What amazes me is their driving here.
Oh.
You know, they seem like a real gentle people, and then they get under the steering wheel and and you get apparently some what appears to be aggressive driving from them. So,
well, to me, the most frightening thing I encounter is when I get in a car with an American that starts out the thing there with, "Watch me, I drive like a Japanese." Which usually means jackrabbit starts, it means going too fast, cutting in and out of traffic. And I don't understand why they call that driving like a Japanese, because I honestly don't see that much of that. Younger Japanese, yes, but the average Japanese, if the Japanese were really bad drivers, there'd be accidents all over the place. And
they know when to stop just in time.
you know, it's the thing is they're aware. They're very conscious drivers for the most part. And the thing is, if you're on a side street trying to get into a flow of traffic, you roll your window down, you hold your hand up in the air, and a car will stop and you can get in. You could do that in New York City, and somebody will steal your watch. You know, and you may never get into traffic. Again, that's a negative stereotype, and there could be occasions when you would, but I mean, it's just there is politeness, there's courtesy out there on the road. It's you know, again, what we perceive, what we see, and everything like that. There, I mean, when there's a lot of traffic there, the Japanese are very patient. Americans are impatient in traffic. I hate traffic. I mean, I'll get in there and I'm nervous. I'm looking for a way around, which is the faster lane, things like that. For the most part, the Japanese just, you know, wait, and then they, you know, they get to go. It's more of a resignation to life. These are things that. That's another big thing of ours. There's impatience.
You're right, and they're very courteous in traffic. I mean, they do take the time to let you out, and make sure the part of the road that is painted to
Yeah.
to not go on, so if somebody needs to go into the
Yeah.
lane, they
Yeah.
can do it.
Mhm.
You know, I just
Mhm.
think it's awesome.
Oh, it
Sumo.
is. Sumo. Sumo. Uh, over,
If you don't mind talking about the bay, some too as
Yeah.
well from the
Uh,
trip.
over my many years in Japan, I've had periods when I was relatively enthused by sumo. Uh, it's not a big thing for me, especially right now. Although I do have this fascination with up here. I think the name of the the stable is Azumiseki, which is in Fukuoka, and the owner, the leader of that thing, is a retired sumo wrestler, Takamiyama. He's Samoan. He's Hawaiian, actually, of Samoan heritage. A big man, 6'6" or so or more. And when I came to Japan in 1964, Jesse, that's his Hawaiian name, Jesse, and I don't remember his last name, but Jesse was starting over here, and he was the first foreign-born, non-Japanese wrestler to break into the professional ranks. And he was very, very popular with the Japanese. I mean, he was huge, absolutely. His height, his weight.
How tall?
Again, I'm thinking, what, 6'6", well, matter of fact, looking at a picture of me standing next to him, I guess he's probably even close to 7 feet tall, 6'8" maybe. I don't really have a good thing of height, but matter of fact, he's about a head taller than me. So the big bushy sideburns. He had big bushy sideburns with his sumo hair up there, and but he had spindly legs. That was his only drawback as a sumo wrestler. Normally he would win his bouts immediately. The other wrestler would come at him there and he'd shove him, and the other wrestler would fall down, fly out of the ring or whatever. But then the Japanese wrestlers, the smaller wrestlers, found the way to get Jesse where it was to give a false start and then step to the side. And when he came forward to push them out, he was off balance. All they had to do was put their hands on his back and he went down. So he got up into, he never made Yokozuna, grand champion, but hugely popular with the Japanese. He's got a very gravelly voice because in the late 60s, he took a hand shot to the throat from another wrestler and damaged his vocal cords. So he's got this really gravelly voice when he talks. Well, you heard him out at the stable out there. Yeah. And but he was, they used him in many commercials. The biggest one and I joke with him about this when we go out there, was maruhachi. Maruhachi is a Japanese futon. It's the blanket, the thick blanket. And he would come in with, they'd have him in pajamas with feet in them and a nightcap on and maybe a couple small kids, and they'd lay down on this futon, him in the middle, a kid on each side, and pull it up there, and then he'd lay there and go to sleep. And that was, he was the spokesperson for Maruhachi futon. So really, the Japanese loved him.
You're saying futon, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
but
some Americans won't understand.
Yeah, they're looking for
Futons.
futons. They're looking for futons. Japanese is A-E-U-A-O, so it's futon. But anyways, yes, I understand what you're saying, yes. Yeah, so, matter of fact, it's kind of sad now, because when I was talking to him out there the last time we were in Fukuoka, he says, well, no, they don't ask him for any commercials anymore, and they don't, they don't ask him for, television and that. And it seems a little bit sad, but now he made a huge stride, because when he retired, you cannot own a sumo stable in Japan without being Japanese. Now he's married to a Japanese, but every other American in Japan or foreigner in Japan married to a Japanese, what they get is an immigrant visa, like we give people going to the States. So it's an alien immigrant visa where they can stay here, and no problem. But they went so far as to get him Japanese citizenship. So, that was a huge thing. He's the one that brought the wrestlers over. He brought over Akebono. Akebono was out of his wrestling stable, who did go on to become a yokozuna. Konishiki, the large Hawaiian wrestler who retired some years ago. So he's brought a number of other foreigners into Japan, a lot of Samoans and that. Yeah.
And he had the day that we were there, he had a Samoan there that day, correct? Wasn't that one of the young men?
No, the one young man there was a Mongol.
Okay.
Yes, and he's extremely successful. Jesse says, watch him. He's going, if he doesn't make Yokozuna, he's going to make Ozeki, just below Yokozuna. But he's very quick, good hands, very agile. So, yeah.
Yeah, he was knocking them out of the ring one after the other. Now, I do have a question for you, because there was one point during the while we were there that it looked like they were, one of the guys was kind of on the ground and they were all circled around him. Do you recall that time? And it's almost like they were giving him a hard time.
Oh, well.
What were they doing? I've often wondered what they were doing.
Well, again, it's just like with anything, your mind is an important part of really getting into a sport. Humility. So yes, and every one of them, the younger wrestlers, they have to go through that. Where, I mean, you look at it, it looks like bullying. It looks like ganging up on the weaker person or whatever. But it's all part of the training. It's all part of the training, instilling in them there, because they have to keep fighting. When people are pushing them, when the people are holding them down and that, they have to keep fighting. Because if you stop fighting, then basically it's like you're surrendering, and you don't have the strength and the will to do it. So it's all done with a purpose. See, sumo wrestling is based on Shinto. It's a Shinto ceremony.
Okay.
That's why with the throwing of the salt, that's to drive the devil out of the ring, and the ceremony, all the things they do with their hands, and this. It was actually a religious ceremony up until a few hundred years ago, and then it was brought down into the thing of a sport. But when you watch it there, that's why the referee in the robes and that, very ceremonial. You see sumo, when a sumo tournament, what you see on TV, again, it's been stylized and brought into the 20th, now the 21st century, to fit it to within a 2-hour TV program. So a sumo, every day's sumo matches, a tournament lasts 15 days. Starts on a Saturday, ends 2 Sundays hence. Okay, so that's 15-day period. So what you got is it will start very early in the morning. It'll start 8, 9 o'clock in the morning with young boys out there wrestling. And these are totally amateur, usually from the area wherever the matches are being held. And it'll progress from there up through junior high school, amateur, and then up through the very lowest ranks of the professional wrestlers. Right up until about 2:45, then they'll clear the ring, sweep it all out.
Hey, the one sweeping usually, is that like anyone in particular, or?
It could be the most junior sumo. It could be the one who's having the most problems in picking up the you know, the skills that they're looking for. So it's definitely it's a degrading responsibility. It's a necessary responsibility. It's all recognized as that, but it's something the person wants to grow out of. They would rather somebody else was doing it. Okay, so it's not like they're being disrespected when they're doing that. It's just there's a reason they're doing that, and they need to get better at something to graduate from having to do that. But again, as you watch, you'll have when they actually come up into the where they wear the top knot, the sumo hair style. That's when they're getting up there into the top ranks. That those start at 4 o'clock. Okay, they'll have the parade of the East and the West. You have the Nishi and the Higashi teams. They're wrestling against each other. So they'll parade out, and they do their things around the ring, and they bow, and the yokozunas do their little ceremony in the middle, and then they'll walk around, and then they'll leave the ring, and then they start into those matches there. Now it's very neatly packaged because the final match of the tournament will be the yokozuna, the senior, the grand master, okay, and whoever he's wrestling. Sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 grandmasters simultaneously. They will be the last 2 or 3 matches of the tournament for that day. But it'll all end again very neatly at 6 o'clock. So it's you know, that's the way they do it. In you know, decades ago, before television and everything, sumo tournaments may go on until 7 or 8 at night if you know, all the protocol and all that there, and it needed more time or something came up that but yeah, now it's kind of time driven. But if somebody wants to watch sumo, really is interested to seeing sumo from the beginning to end, you know, what from the ranks and grades of people wrestling, you really need to go about 9 o'clock in the morning and sit in the stands. There'll be very few people there. Very few people there. You'll see people coming in throughout the day, again, as the better wrestlers start. And then it starts getting crowded about 4, about 5 o'clock usually the stands are full. Okay. Yeah.
The baya, or the stables, the sumos that are training, correct, usually live there, is that right?
Yes.
And then they have the top knots. Can you explain, that's just part of the, I know you're probably in a hurry here, you have to finish a few minutes, so if you want, you know.
Well, their hair is long, and they pull it all up to the top of their head, and then they get their the top knot up there.
Does that have anything to do with the samurai day?
It's samurai.
Is that very
it's samurai, the hair thing. A big thing is when a sumo retires, that is the big ceremony, is cutting the hair. They get them in the middle of the ring, they cut their hair, usually they'll cry when that's done, and yeah, but that's the end of their sumo career.
Okay. Yeah. And then they have someone else to fix their hair.
Yeah.
Basically, they don't do it themselves.
Well, for the most part, most sumo wrestlers will do it themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Now they may tighten up for each other, and but it's not like they have a beautician that goes with them to do their hair up and all that. It's they're adroit at doing it themselves. Putting on the mawashi, the big thing Americans tend to believe it looks like a diaper, and like that.
And it's actually more, I mean, just from what I saw, it's a very hard piece of material. I mean, it can't be comfortable for them.
No,
you know?
no,
it did not look.
It's kind of a canvas-like material.
Yeah.
And it's very long. The mawashi is very long because it goes around and around and up and under and down and around and folded through and tied and everything. So it's
very interesting.
Yeah. ただね、日本語はそうほど難しくないんですよ。日本語は英語より全然簡単ですよ。日本語を話しするんだったら、まあ、それいつものあいうえおのサウンドあるんですよね、発音で。英語はそういう A, E, I, O, and U. That's the A, E, U, A, O in the Japanese sound. But in English, A, E, I, O, and U can be pronounced a number of different ways depending on the word, because our words came from all the languages of the world and were incorporated into English, American English especially. But Japanese, once you learn the sounds, A, E, U, E, O, and then you just put a consonant in front of it, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko, sa, shi, su, se, so, na, ni, nu, ne, no, it will never be pronounced different than that. So if you see a word written, and too often we Americans, we misstate, we say that, this is easier to read because it's in English. The word Yokohama, that's not written in English. It's a Japanese word, and it's written in Romaji, Roman characters. Okay, they're using the ABC characters, the Roman characters. So, if you see a word written in Romaji, you can pronounce it just as well as the Japanese can, because there's no differences with the vowel sound. You say Yokohama, sa, se, bo. Okay. Now, many of the people in Yokosuka, they say, "Oh yeah, I stay in Yokosuka. I'm up in Yokosuka." Yokosuka would be spelled Yakusuka, but it's not. It's Yokos, Yokosuka. See, so that's
the fun word I think is Fukuoka.
Fukuoka. Yeah.
Fukuoka. I've heard it pronounced.
Oh.
The movie translation with Bill Murray, Lost in Translation with Bill Murray. The guy pronounced it Fukuoka, I think.
Yeah.
Fukuoka.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sure.
But and that's because we think we have to make it hard, because in our language things are hard. You see, English is a learned language. English is totally a learned language. I mean, you learn your ABCs, that's simple. There's 26 of them. Kanji, there's hundreds of them, thousands. But you learn your ABCs, but then when you put them all together, there's a thing I use when I'm talking with a Japanese student. Because many Japanese think Japanese is harder than English. They can't understand why they're having trouble talking. It's because conversational English is impossible. It's a learned thing. We've been learning since the day we were born. Okay. B-O-T-H. Both. Both. Bobby, boo, be, bo. B-O is bo. So that works. Both. B-O-O-T-H. Double the vowel in a Japanese word, and what you're doing, you extend the vowel. Both. Both. No, it's not. That's booth. Well, B-U is booth. Okay?
Yes.
And then you take B-O-T-T-O-M. The Japanese, when they'll say it, they'll say bottom. Bottom. Where it's at the bottom of the stairs. No, that's bottom. Bottom. B-A is ba. See, so it's just...
it's very different. And one thing I find here is just about everything is the opposite. If we're going to think one thing, it's going to be totally the opposite, seemingly, here in Japan.
It's when you're talking and you say, too often what Americans will do is we'll learn some vocabulary, and then we'll build a sentence, and say, okay, fine. Okay, where is the train station? Doko eki wa. Doko, where. Wa is eki, train station. No, eki wa doko desu ka? Eki wa doko desu ka?
Totally the opposite.
You put the subject of the sentence goes first. Okay? But that's not only in Japanese. Many languages of the world construct their sentences that way. So our problem is we think the way we do it is the natural way. It is the right way, you see. And other people are dumb because they do it differently. It's the hardest thing to get people to recognize and understand.
True.
Different isn't dumb. Different is nothing more than different.
One thing I would love to see is the bridge from, it just seems like Japanese are so open to be willing to learn from other countries how to do things better.
Yeah.
I would like to see that more in America. I would just love to see more of us being more open-minded, and I think we are more so, but it just seems like we're still somewhat closed-minded, that we do it right, that, you know, and I mean, just little things like the little gap in the sliding glass doors here. They have a little gap so you can actually sweep your dirt out. You know, I mean, of course, vacuum cleaners, you can do that with that, but it's still, it's just, you know.
No, it's
I would just love to see.
something that struck me and fascinated me in the late 60s. I was teaching English in a school in Yokohama. And because I spoke Japanese, I would get the students that had trouble reading English and that, so strict conversation. And I had a gentleman in the class, and he was 83 or 84 years old. And I'm wondering, why does this guy want to, and he didn't know any English, but he tried very hard, and he was picking up words. He was memorizing, and he was working on it. You know, and I asked him, why, at your age, why do you want to learn English? His daughter had married an American, was living in the States, and she was going to pay for his plane ticket to fly there in 4 months, and he didn't want to embarrass her by not knowing any English.
Wow.
My thing is, how many Americans run out and take Japanese lessons before, or French lessons, or German lessons, or whatever? Oh, to be sure, there's some. But the vast majority of us, it's, you know, well, here I am, deal with me, you know. And but the Japanese are fascinated by other cultures and that.
They are, and they want to be so sure to get everything right. You ask them the simplest little question, and it can turn into 30 minutes of, got to make sure that you know what you're wanting, that I'm understanding it, and that you get what you're needing, you know, and it's...
very concerned about the details.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I have your permission to put this on a DVD.
Yes.
I didn't have the release. If I can do it verbally.
No problem. No problem.
Thank
That
you
ought
so
to drive
much.
people away. There's no way you're going to sell that one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm not hearing this.
Yeah.
We'll cut it off at that point.